I'm Iniba, and thank you so much for tuning in to Halo Halo, your top entertainment and lifestyle show for Asian Pacific Americans. Today, meet a filmmaker, director, writer, Jeffrey Gee Chin. All of his works always catch people's attention, whether it's through awards or being on Good Morning America. This film alone, Lil Tokyo Reporter, has received over 19 awards, and he's here to tell us all about it and give us some advice. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, before we get into all of the wonderful films that you've done and have caught the attention of everyone, I want to know how you got started.
Oh, wow. I first got started when I traveled back to my ancestral village in China. I was only about 18 or 19 years old, and I brought one of those small DV cams.
Right.
And so I was working with the Chinese Cultural Center of San Francisco and decided that we would make a short little documentary about our experience. Little did I know, by the time we finished editing it, Good Morning America heard of it and actually set up a special interview with me and another member of the Chinese Culture Center for the In Search of Roots program.
Right.
And we got to talk about the experience, and so I was very happy about that.
What was your experience like over there? Was it your first time being over there, or?
It was my first time being in China. I'm 3 generations Chinese American, and I've always been really close with my maternal grandfather. So I got to go to my grandmother's village and my grandfather's village.
Wow.
But you know, it was actually really magical because I could never imagine all the hardships that my grandfather must have gone through.
Right. What do you think it was that caught the attention of Good Morning America?
I think it was like each individual, there's 11 of us who went. Each of us had a very unique story growing up, and a lot of us were sort of, you know, not that close with our ancestral heritage.
Right.
And so this allowed us to get even closer, and especially as Asian Americans, I think it's a very important story to tell, that we've been here for many generations, and we can sort of celebrate the journey like any other immigrant group, that we all came here to be part of the American community.
If we wanted to see this documentary that you did, is there a way that we could see it?
You can watch it on YouTube if you look for In Search of Roots 2005.
Okay, and then you were telling me before we started taping that that was kind of when you decided, I want to do film.
Yeah.
So you started off doing documentaries?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of just, well, first in high school, of course, we'd play with the small cameras and do our knockoffs of The Matrix and Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
But eventually I wanted to do projects that would have long-standing value. So I worked in high school on helping rebuild one of the first Chinese junk boat at China Camp State Park. And so I made a small documentary about that. And
Now, I also mentioned that you did the Lil Tokyo Reporter. How did this come about? What inspired you?
Well, I sort of continued working on this documentary, so I finished off my undergrad studies at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And afterwards I started studying under Felicia Lowe and Eddie Wong at the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation.
Okay.
And doing documentary profiles about early immigrants who came in through 1910 and 1940.
Right.
I ended up representing Angel Island at a historic preservation forum, and I met members of the Lil Tokyo Historical Society.
Okay.
There I met the founder, Bill Watanabe, and one of the founding members, Carol Fujita. And she told me this history about an individual who was, you know, one of the early Japanese American civil rights leaders, and he also happened to practice law and run newspapers. At the time, my parents wanted me to go to law school, but the funny thing is I ended up making a film about a lawyer.
So what did they say when they saw this film?
They were pretty impressed.
I hear that it has to do with a man who was a lawyer back in was it in Japan?
He actually, so he was born in 1882 and came over here in 1903.
Right.
So he was a pretty young man, and so he actually went to, I think, high school out here, and he went to USC Law School.
Right, but then he couldn't be a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Is that how it all began?
So as the laws made it so it was illegal for him to become a citizen at that time, and so thereby he couldn't do the bar exam. Yeah.
What was it that made you say, okay, I want to do a story on this, and why do you think it's won so many awards?
That's a hard question to answer, but you know, what I found was important just starting the project was to find a story that people of my age group, you know, between 20 and 30, who like might not be interested in this type of history yet.
Right.
You know, a lot of us get interested in it maybe when our grandparents get older, and then we finally want to hear their story, and then by the time we get into it, they pass away.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, it's a story about a newspaper man. But doing further research, I found out that, you know, he had run-ins with the local mafia. He had a particular interest in married women. Yeah. And I was like, oh, there must be a story somewhere in here.
What I've noticed is you don't just do any type of film. It's films that have a message or that's related to our community, and I love that about your work. You also did one called Anastasia's Journey, which deals with human trafficking, and is it a Filipino nurse who comes to America?
Yeah, it's a Filipino immigrant who is promised an opportunity in America, and she ends up getting kidnapped, and the story is about her ability to send a message back home despite the situation she's in. Yeah. And so it's a very dark story, and I did it as like my second film that I was doing at USC's grad program. And I worked with a wonderful actress, Sheila Tejeda. And yeah, I mean, she manages to acquire a digital camera. So there's a thing going on with digital cameras.
Yep, exactly.
And her SD card manages to get out of the building that she was stuck in.
Yeah. So. What was the message you wanted to share through this film?
I think it needed to be a story about persistence, and that, you know, and no matter what, you know, if you're fighting for something you believe in, or if you're fighting for any sort of freedom, there's always a way to share your story with other people, and so that was important to me.
We have to take a quick break, but after the break, I want to talk about this event that you're going to be a part of, Long Beach Comic Con, and also your future projects.
Oh, thank you so much.
Time for a quick break, but don't go anywhere because we have more news from director Jeffrey Gee Chin, all when we return.